Oh, looky. It's Sean, and it's not Twos, and there's no rant today, so everybody's going to have to suck that up. We got an interesting show for you today. We got a new guest host coming on for today. That's the first time in 130 mashups, so that's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. But before we get to all of today's show, a shout out to Twos and his days off. You know, I guess he's somewhere with his feet up, folks. Maybe he's probably sitting there with a cigar or something in his mouth, feet up, kick back, listening to this, maybe. And, of course, we're at 22 viewers and counting. Thanks for joining us Friday morning on the Mashup. We're here every Friday, 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and we got a whole lot of things to get to today. Let's start with, we start with the fact we got the Mashup collection. So if anybody's interested in repping the Rooster and all the good stuff, I'll toss that in the comments. We got Happy Airborne Friday to Jamie Sinclair and all the military boys out there. Thanks for tuning in. A weekly reminder that it's 6.5 years for the Coots 2, Christopher Carbert, Anthony Olenek. As we always do, we bring that up here. And October, well, actually, before I get to Saskatchewan election live coverage, we did BC election coverage there, and it was a hit. It was a lot of fun. A shout out to all the people who came on and joined us. We had anywhere between 7,800 people at one time watching, and in total 34,000 of you fine people tune into that. So that was super cool to do, I'm not going to lie. And coming up this October 28th, we have Sask election live coverage coming, brought to you by our friends over at AMC Electrical. That's Drew McKay. He's been a part of the podcast before, and it's going to be streamed at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on Rumble, YouTube, X, Facebook. And the lineup, folks, is going to be interesting. We got Jerry Ritz, John Gormley, Lise Merle, Nadine Ness, Quick Dick McDick, Brad Wall, Ken Rutherford, Angela Schmidt, Lee Harding, Gage Hobrich from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Wayne Peters, Jamie Sinclair. So that night is going to be something to pay attention to, I think. That's Monday night of Sask live election coverage. A couple other things to keep in mind. November 1st and 2nd, we're going to be at the UCP AGM. That, once again, is brought to you by AMC Electrical and Bottom Hand Ranch Services. We're going to be hospitality room on November 1st. So cash bar, bring your dollars and cents. Come have a conversation with me and Twos as we're live there. And then November 5th, we're gonna have a little bit of fun with the U.S. election. And, we'll keep you up to date on everything there and try and have a little bit of fun. Okay, that all being said, today we got no Twos, which means I'm going to bring in our guest host today, a new guest host. This should be fun. Canadian content creator Greg Wycliffe of SaveFreeSpeech.ca. Greg, thanks for strapping it on this morning and taking the place of Sir Twos.
Hey, no problem. I'm honored to fill the big shoes of Twos, and I hope to do a good job today and telling everybody about the clown world of living in Canada. So,
well, I think you won't have any problems. If you have never bumped into Greg, folks, he's been on the podcast. Of course, you're out in Ontario, which should give this an interesting flavor, I would think. It's first time that I've had. I think when I go back through the hosts that Twos had while I was gone, it was either Alberta or Vance Crowe, who's St. Louis. So you had a guy from the States, and we've had mainly Alberta co-hosts. Now we're going to have a little side-to-side, coast-to-coast, if you would, of Canada. So thanks for hopping on and doing this.
Yeah, no problem. I hope I can give a diverse perspective on what's going on. However, at the same time, I get a lot of comments of, you don't live in Alberta? I thought you hated Ottawa so much that you live in Alberta. It seems like you would live in Alberta based on your opinion on Ottawa. But no, I'm in Ontario. I just also hate Ottawa like you guys. But diversity is our strength, I think is the slogan, isn't it? That's what they say. Trudeau's never wrong.
We'll get to if wherever you guys are tuning in from, make sure to comment. Murray Henderson, good morning, folks. Michelle Krieger and Zane, and on we go. Yes, I know everyone's missing Twos. Yes, I know. I get it. And Kevin Demon. All right. Cool. Well, let's get to it. We got a full show today. We got a guest going to join us here in a couple minutes as well to break down one of the things going on here in Canada. Either way, we'll see if we can't inform, maybe do a little entertaining this morning. Every rat but one fleeing the ship. This is a National Post article. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau confirmed he plans to stay put as the Liberal leader past the deadline, that is, of next Monday, given to him around by 24 of his caucus members, triggering disappointment among some dissidents, yourself included. Trudeau was provided that date and a letter read aloud to him during Wednesday's closed-door caucus meeting, which sources described as an airing of long simmering grievances about the party's troubles, leading to upwards of around 30, which I'm pretty sure was 24 now, Liberal members of Parliament calling on Trudeau to step down.
It's all about the election. It's all about winning. And Trudeau's just got that name recognition. So he's like, hey, I'm going to stay on the ballot. I'm going to be the guy, although people hate me. Who's heard of you? Who's heard of you, Mark Miller? Like, they're trying to get Mark Carney's name out there as someone that people have heard of. But at the end of the day, his international acclaim, his popularity, Justin Trudeau, he wants it on the ballot. Liberal Party wants it on the ballot because, I also think that him stepping down would sort of be a sign of retreat, as if all of his BS ideas of progressivism are actually all nonsense, which they are. But if he were to retreat and step down, it would actually make it seem like there might be a cultural shift happening, which is happening, but it would signify that. And it would actually give a lot of the opponents and enemies of Trudeau a lot of oxygen. So I think that's kind of why he didn't step down, for those reasons. The name recognition on the ballot, and also I think it would show retreat, which would kind of question all of these progressive ideals that we've heard from Trudeau over the years.
But isn't it giving an oxygen to, like, him staying in is giving oxygen to everyone in the opposition, because he just, every time he opens his mouth, you're like, oh man. And every new scandal that breaks, I'm like, I can't imagine being a part of the Liberal Party and being like, this is a good idea. Greg, we're sitting having a beer. Let's keep Justin. He's got great name recognition. Yeah, he's got name recognition, all right.
Maybe they're sitting in there. Maybe they're sitting in there like, somebody's got to snap. One of these right wingers has got to snap at some point. We got to keep him in. Soon someone will snap, and then we'll have an excuse to push more nonsense. I don't know.
The COVID hysteria is back? Probably not. Alberta Federation of Labor President Gil McGowan says COVID-19 continues to be a threat to people and the healthcare system. McGowan said COVID-19 is exacerbating dire shortages of frontline healthcare workers. Quoted, "It's long past time for us to stop listening to the deniers running the UCP," that is the United Conservative Party here in Alberta, "and start getting serious about slowing infections," McGowan said Wednesday.
It reminds me of the friend, the friend from high school who's messaging you all of a sudden. You haven't talked to them in years, and they're messaging you, and you're like, why is this person from high school messaging me? And they're like, I'm part of this multi-level marketing scheme. You really got to check it out. You got to buy in. That's what I feel in this situation when people are trying to revitalize the COVID hysteria. It's like, guys, it's over. I'm not buying into your COVID thing. I'm not buying your product. Your cult is very weird. I'm just not into it. I said no. I'm saying no again. I know you're trying to make money or whatever, but quite frankly, it's very off-putting that you keep bringing up this crazy multi-level marketing scheme. I've seen the people behind this scheme. It doesn't look good. Okay. Quite frankly, I think some of them might be international criminals, responsible for fill in the blank. Nothing good. So
what was the last marketing scheme you got a call for? And they're like, they're still doing that? They're still selling those health products that supposed to make you, healthy in 2 days? What was the last one, Greg, that you recall?
I'm not going to name drop them, but one of them had to do with like cleaning products that are like supernatural. Another one was organic. The other one was like an energy drink. And they wanted you to buy just 30 energy drinks a month, and you just subscribe to energy drinks for the rest of your life. This one is you subscribe to booster shots for the rest of your life. And apparently it makes you healthier. Each new one makes you healthier because the virus is still evolving, you see, right? That's the whole pitch. That's the whole sort of angle It's still evolving years and years later. And yeah, it's I can't believe there's what they have all this product. Maybe we should give them some sympathy. They're sitting on all this products. Guys, we made all these vaccine vials. We need to sell them. We need to get rid of them. We need to get them off the shelf. They're only viable for so long. So we got to try to, get this back in the heads of our consumers. Get it back on the news. Are you with me?
It's like trying to get Trudeau elected, It's like I mean it's hide and seek. Two men have pleaded guilty to the contract killing of Sikh man who was acquitted in the 1985 bombing of an Air India flight from Montreal to Mumbai. According to an agreed statement of facts released by a British Columbia court on Monday, Tanner Fox and Joe Lopez confessed to the shooting of Singh Malik in 2022, but they remained silent over who hired and paid them for the murder. Malik was a prime suspect in the attack on Air India Flight 182, which exploded off the coast of Ireland, killing 329 people. But he and another man, Singh Bagri, were acquitted after a judge determined that two key prosecution witnesses were unreliable. He was shot dead in 2022 outside his clothing import business he owned in Surrey, British Columbia.
Yeah, but have you heard of the far right? The far right are the real terrorists in this country. You got to look out for these right wingers. All this stuff about Sikh extremism. Sure, maybe they were responsible for the deadliest terror attack in Canadian history, but they still have not been listed as a terrorist organization. And all this talk of foreign interference, of course, and it's very interesting. The third largest major political party is led by Jagmeet Singh, and if I'm not mistaken, he's not even allowed to go to India. He cannot even step foot in the country of India, and they call Maxime Bernier a terrorist. It's like, well, no, this guy who leads the Orange Party, if you want to call anyone a terrorist in the House of Commons, or at least a terrorist sympathizer, or at least has had dinner and broken bread with terrorist sympathizers or friends of literal terrorists, it'd be Jagmeet Singh. He would be the guy where it wouldn't even be an exaggeration to draw those connections. And but I'm really glad that at least all this foreign interference conversation is coming up. But you know what I say to that? It's nothing new, guys. It's nothing new. It's been a thing for a little while. And there are scary people out there. But unfortunately, sometimes CSIS and the RCMP, when it's a slow day for them, they're like, all these right wing, we have to look out for ideological motivated violent extremism. And it looks like people who criticize Justin Trudeau, not these Sikh men who are, connected to the Air India bombing.
Here's Brenda Belanger said he was the second person assassinated from the Air India, and Jagmeet was also labeled a terrorist from that attack. He changed his name. He's on the terrorist list. I don't know if that's correct rate to what you're talking about. Yeah.
He's on the list.
Is this Twos? Is this Twos commenting? Technically, Trudeau and his ex also had dinner with Splody folks. He says, "Hey, Greg, looking great." So there you go. I guess he is signing on. I am curious on the foreign interference. I mean, I'm pretty sure we've covered this at length. But you talk about our government and you look at all the things going on, and you read all the reports. On your side of the country, what are people saying, Greg, about all this?
I mean, the average person in Toronto doesn't even care about the politics. They're here for the free stuff. They're caught up in the rat race, and to them, it's kind of just a passing meme on their Instagram feed. So they don't think much of it. What does the average person think of the foreign interference? They pretend to care, I guess. They're kind of caught up in sort of the mainstream sort of frame of the conversation, which is like, oh, they're looking into foreign interference. They're looking into it, and it's like, yeah, I think it's kind of been a thing for a while. I also find it kind of interesting too. I don't want to rub people the wrong way here, but I'm pretty sure it's a rule in the House of Commons that if you're going to talk about foreign interference, you cannot be a white person. You're not allowed to talk about foreign interference and be a white person. Every time, is it me or every clip that I see in the House of Commons, it's someone wearing a turban. It's someone who's, non-white. Sometimes they don't even speak good English. and they're talking about what do you about foreign interference? It's like, really? Like it's quite amusing, the clown show of this country. But
Keep to the people commenting. I found this interesting. I don't know if I just glazed over this at some point. Brenda says, "Fact he can't go to the USA or back to India." And I was like, I didn't know that Jagmeet can't go to the United States. I didn't know that. And then another Mark Cole says, yes, India has Jagmeet listed as a terrorist to India, and he can't be extradited because he is a politician. So that's, I mean, people are blowing my mind this morning on the comments. I didn't. I guess you hear all the stupid things he says, and you see him sit down and as Greg's pointed out, break bread and talk to these people. But I didn't know a couple of those things, so that's very interesting from the chat. I appreciate people chiming in. And a guy who's done a ton of work on this is a guy who's been on the podcast before, is Mocha Bazurgan. He's been documenting the Palestinians and some of the protests going on and discussions in Calgary. It's making me wonder about, I probably should reach out and try and get him back on the podcast, because it feels like there's a whole lot more to be talked about that people should know about.
Absolutely. You definitely check out his Twitter, Mocha Bezergan, I think is how you say his last name. But he's been following the Khalistani movement in Canada for some time now. And it is a sort of interesting juxtaposition, because we all saw the sort of burning Canadian flag, and they said, death to Israel, death to USA, death to Canada. And the thing is, there's plenty of clips of Khalistanis burning flags and, destroying, like killing effigies of the Indian prime minister. They've been doing this for a while now. But it's just interesting how that never got any sort of mainstream attention at all, because this content is like outrageous to see this happening on Canadian streets. A sort of foreign group of people who are, some of them are calling for their own nation state of Khalistan in Canada. And it gets very little mainstream attention. And I'm sure if you get Mocha on the show, he would kind of illuminate why that is. The sort of teaser would be, there's a lot of connections between the World Sikh organization, the Khalistani movement, and people actually sitting in parliament and sitting in other legislatures across the country. I think provincial ones. Don't quote me on that, but yeah.
Inflation relief. The Bank of Canada claimed victory against high inflation on Wednesday as it delivered its supersized interest rate cut and signaled its policy rate will likely to continue falling in the coming months. The half percentage point interest rate cut marks the fourth consecutive reduction since June and brings the central bank's policy interest rate down to 3.75%. Quoted, high inflation and interest rates have been a heavy burden for Canadians. With inflation now back to target and interest rates continuing to come down, families, businesses, and communities should feel some relief.
Yeah, I don't feel too relieved. I feel like this is only a temporary thing. I feel like things are still going to get more expensive. Is this signify a upward trend? Is the inflation going to completely reverse with these rate changes? I'm not feeling too optimistic. This feels like a little bit of a breadcrumb, a little bit of a, hey, yeah, this is a sort of almost like a pressure release valve to let us feel like things aren't going to totally clearly in the downward trajectory. I don't know. That's kind of my perspective on it. But
I mean, I read that article. I'm like, if I go talk to 5 people, 5 in a row, and ask them about the cost of living right now, the cost of it's not even like it's insane. Like it's
and you tell them,
insane.
But yeah, did you see the rate change?
The rate cut. We got a rate cut. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Have you seen the price of milk? Doesn't really,
it doesn't jive.
Yeah. It doesn't help me this week. And it's funny when people kind of take these little statistics and say, see, things are turning around. And it's like, who are you kidding? And it really reflects the disconnect between, like you said, talking to actual people on the ground in real life in Canada versus sort of the Ottawa bubble people. I like to call it the Ottawa bubble, where everyone in the Ottawa bubble is rubbing shoulders with each other. The pundits are friends with the bureaucrats, and they kind of form all of these opinions, and they say, yeah, there's a rate change and it's a good thing. And there's nothing else to worry about because I live in the Ottawa bubble and everything is fine and taken care of for me because of my pension. And the rest of the country is like, yeah, really feel like I'm not being represented here. Really feels like we're just getting the cold shoulder, being left out in the cold. And I'm sure, are you guys not used to that by now? The people out in Alberta, like generally it's like, yeah, oh, Ottawa treating us like crap again. Just another Friday.
Just an just another Friday. Yes. You know what's funny? I didn't know what to do with this headline. Part of me is like, you go from the Bank Canada, oh, interest rate cuts, we're all doing great, and then you got Trump in a barber shop. I'll get to it. Politicians will say anything for your vote. During a Fox News segment on Monday, Mr. Trump, former President Trump, took questions at a barbershop in the Bronx. When asked if the United States could potentially end all federal taxation, he said the country could return to the economic policies of the late 19th century when there was no federal income tax.
Dare to dream, baby. Dare to dream. Why not? You know, I'm kind of like radical minded when it comes to the world of politics. And I say, because people are like, oh, you got to be realistic in politics, but you also got to be unrealistic, and you got to like say crazy stuff like, we're going to build a wall. Like that was pretty outrageous when Trump first came out and said that. And sure enough, he kept pushing and saying that over and over again. So maybe, you know, no taxes for anybody, you know, like
nobody's paying taxes.
And I would even compare it to what we hear from these like crazy people from, you know, the UN and World Economic Forum of, you will own nothing and you'll be happy. That's crazy, but that's still sort of like an unrealistic ideal that they keep repeating and saying over and over again. So I say we got to do the same thing, which is no federal income tax. Let's go back to the good old days, you know, before what was it? World War I when they introduced the income tax, or World War II? I'm not quite sure.
World War I, was it not?
Yeah, I think so. So, you know, we're not at war. Maybe we're actually in a couple of wars, but but yeah, no, I like the energy of kind of radical statements like that, especially if they're kind of pointed in the direction that I would like to go.
It was great because it was in a barber shop, right? Surrounded by guys. Can we go back? It's like, what's Trump's gonna, you know, like, I mean, can you imagine a world where we didn't pay taxes? It was all tariffs, right? That's basically what they were alluding to. It's like, is it possible? Yeah. Is it possible? It's like, well, sure, but like, is that actually going to happen? No,
right.
Like
it's the idea of being surrounded by a bunch of like voters, and the politicians like, yeah, and like, sure. It's like he turns into Oprah all of a sudden, and I'll buy you a car. And you'll pay no taxes. Oh, this guy's great. We love him. Yeah. And walk out, never see him again. Let's
okay, let's see what 1913 is when Zane says income tax came in. And then a whole bunch of other things. Well, I say that, and then I'm reading these, but I'm not pulling them up. There you go. Brenda Belanger says, actually, people are selling and becoming nomads because of pressure of cost of living. That's going back to the inflation, and 4.45 interest rate only applies to first-time buyers, and on and on and on it goes. Okay, here's the next headline, folks. Politicians do the flip-flop game. Justin Trudeau, we're going to significantly reduce the number of immigrants coming to Canada for the next 2 years. This is temporary to pause our population growth and let our economy catch up. We have to get the system working right for all Canadians.
The far right is vindicated. All of the racists, whites, all the people, all the right-wing evil people who opposed mass immigration have been totally vindicated. And I kind of take the perspective of, did Justin Trudeau beat Pierre Poilievre to the punch in terms of opposing mass immigration, or at the very least kind of saying we should reduce the numbers and saying these should be the numbers? You know, of course, I don't like Trudeau. Of course, he's flip-flopping, saying all these weird things that are counter to what his politics are to try and stay relevant or kind of release the pressure valve of how much people detest him. But I want to see more from Pierre Poilievre here. I feel like this is the perfect opportunity for him to push hard against mass immigration now that Trudeau has kind of receded some ground. And I'm not really seeing that yet. I'm seeing a lot of Poilievre, you know, pander to different minority groups in Canada. I want him to, champion Canadian culture and call out the radical demographic change that's happening in this country, because there's no other way to describe it. I think if you even look at the stats of the sort of demographic change we're experiencing in this country, that's something that you should want to conserve as a conservative. But quite frankly, we're not seeing that too much out of Poilievre here in terms of actually pushing back against mass immigration. And I think a great example is don't get me wrong, Poilievre's doing a lot of good stuff. He made a video some months ago all about the housing crisis. He's a smart guy. He understands numbers and how all this works. In his whole video about the housing crisis, he doesn't once bring up mass immigration. I hope he starts to now. I hope he starts to connect the dots between the healthcare crisis, the housing crisis, and the many other issues like the going on in Canada, because it's all connected, the rising crime as well, to mass immigration. So I'm hoping this will turn into, a campaign for Pierre Poilievre to push back against mass immigration. But at the same time, I don't know if he has the willingness to really kind of be bold and actually say the things that the majority of Canadians feel.
I just wanted to pull this up. I pulled it up, and when you finish, because you go like, oh, it's mass immigration and everything's over. When you look at the numbers, like, am I reading this wrong? Like, am I 2025, 395,000 people are going to come in, down from the 485 target, and then you go 2026, 380 down from the 500, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, I mean, it's down. It's down.
It's a negligible difference. The numbers aren't nearly low enough. Like, it would be a drop in the bucket. We welcomed over 1 million people last year or something?
I think it was 1.2, wasn't it?
Yeah. So
between temporary workers, students, illegals, on and on and on. So
this would just be for permanent residency. So it doesn't even include that stuff like family reunification and everything else.
Right. So like part of it gets celebrated as this like giant victory or something. And what I think you're pointing out is like he should be pushing harder on this, because look at the underlying numbers and you go, holy crap, we're already in a pickle. Like, I just did a roundtable on the housing shortfall there, and it's only getting worse. The more, like they're going to be millions upon millions of homes short. You're like, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do with all this?
Absolutely. And when people show up and they're in the lower tax bracket, and we have to pay for their health care as well. Mass immigration connects to the cost of living as well. And if Poilievre were to come out strongly against mass immigration and say, you know what, Trudeau, I'm so glad you said that. Now you're not going to call me racist. That's great. We need to reduce the numbers way more. He would get so much support if Poilievre said something like this. His entire base everyone who supports him would love it if he were to come out and say something like this. But unfortunately, I feel like Poilievre is still timid. He's still afraid of the media calling him names or something, or he's playing it safe. This is what Pierre Poilievre supporters always say. No, he can't say that. He's got to play it safe. And it's like, well, if you can't represent your constituents as a politician, then what are you doing? You're not doing your job. And as I think it's becoming abundantly clear, even people who are apolitical are starting to say stuff. Actually, a joke that I say on stage in Toronto when I'm doing stand-up is, how I know there's too many black and brown people in Toronto? Because all of the black and brown people in Toronto are complaining about all of the black and brown people in Toronto. Everyone's talking about this. And, it's Pierre Poilievre, this is your moment. This is your moment to actually, let's turn the tides on this issue and push back. Because right now his rhetoric is, Trudeau broke the immigration system, but I'm going to fix it. And it's like, can you actually just speak more directly to the issue of too many people are coming in here and we need to slow that down? Can we be more honest on this issue? That's what I want from Pierre Poilievre. That's what I'm praying for. He's got the platform. He's got, he's going to be probably the next prime minister. And if he doesn't get more honest and direct on this issue, that's a big red flag for me. That's a big red flag because, he's going to be the guy in charge soon. And this is your opportunity, Conservative Party supporter, to apply pressure. If you want to email your MP, hey, why doesn't Pierre Poilievre push back more against mass immigration? This is his moment. talk to your EDA, talk to your other conservative friends, say something because you matter. Okay. And it's only by applying pressure that the Conservative Party will move and do the right thing.
We're gonna slide over to we got a guest in the back, but before we get there, we'll read the headline and then we'll bring her in. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. George Orwell. We're talking about Bill C-293. I'm going to bring on lawyer Lisa Myron. You may recall Lisa. Thanks, Lisa, for hopping on first.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
So nice to be here with you.
You may recall Lisa from the podcast. She is lawyer Lisa on Substack. She is writing extensively about Bill C-293. That is the Pandemic Prevention and Preparedness Act. And, you know, a couple of things. One is there was this big, like, I don't know how many times I got text saying it passed through Senate this week. And I was like, did it pass through Senate? Then I go look and I can't find anything on it. And the other thing I found really interesting is there's no CBC articles on it whatsoever. You can't find them talking about this document at all. So, Lisa, can you bring us up to speed? What the heck? Just bring us up to speed on Bill C-293.
Yeah, happy to. Okay, so it's at the second reading. And the senator who introduced the bill in her speech at the Senate references none other than the useless eaters Harari in introducing the bill for the second reading in the Senate. And I've got to say, boy, you know, the bill that goes after agriculture and meat eating and, you know, emphasizes bug eating or alternative proteins, however you want to define that, references the useless eater. Like, she just has no filter, this woman. It's at the second reading, and something I've got to say, there's a lot of great things happening on Bill C-293. I did a live talk in Burlington on Wednesday, and over 100 people showed up. And, you know, I spoke to people. They're invigorated about Bill C-293. They want to stop this. And I met this lovely couple, and they spend dawn to dusk printing up letters, Bill C-293 letters, going into the public square and, you know, going to shopping malls and telling people about Bill C-293. And they have this printed up letter, and they're like 100% sign rate. Canadians are really responding, and they're actually taking their personal voices out there. That felt great. And my son came back, and he says he was in the restaurant, and two old guys were talking about Bill C-293. So it's like starting to bubble up, so that she told two friends and she told two friends. It's starting to really, really happen. And this 17 hours ago, Alberta came out against Bill C-293 officially. Now, just on one little narrow part of it, which is the agricultural thing. But now we've got, a province in the game. We have to now explain the bigger aspect of Bill C-293, which is it's a perpetual emergency act with such a low threshold to get in. There's no definition section in this whole thing. And so to get into this perpetual governance on emergency act, all you need is that it's something that could prevent the future risk of something that could cause a pandemic, none of which is defined. Like, how big of a risk, right? This isn't like we're going in and it's bird flu and there's people. No. Like, and it's all about climate in this bill. So, you know, CO2 in the future could, and temperatures could, and there could be, this bill has to be taken out the back and shot. And I want Canadians to understand everywhere that Canadians everywhere are starting to work. So we're working together, as a country, when would Alberta ever think that Ontarians are out there also getting down and pushing against the beast, right? The man. And so we're doing it. I love it. But we have to explain now the NFP, which is the National Focal Points of the WHO, which were set up in 2005. And they kind of hit that through the pandemic. The National Focal Points for Canada are run out of Washington, D.C. at an organization called PAHO, the Pan American Health Organization /WHO. And they list Health Canada, Public Health Agency of Canada, among others, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, as satellite offices of the WHO. That's my terminology to explain it to you, but they're called NFPs. So what that means, when Bill C-293, this Perpetual Emergency Act, right, with any kind of threshold that has expropriation, owning communications, like it's awful, it hands it over to a satellite office of the WHO. So it is a coup. It's not just going after our agriculture. So we got the agriculture. They're talking about that now. But we have to expand that discussion, and we have to realize that they only got in because apparently on the news, the agitation of Canadians, and thank you, Alberta, because you guys have been really delivering, because they said Albertans have been really agitated. Well, get agitated. That's my update.
I got a question.
Yes.
Lisa, why do you think that more politicians from the Conservative Party, Liberal Party, like I haven't really seen any mainstream politicians talk about this or any mainstream media outlets talk about this? Why do you think that is?
Well, one, do they know how to read a bill? Like, I don't know, right? Do they know how to read a bill?
Do they know how to read?
Right? Like, the Conservatives voted against this bill, but they didn't agitate to their people. Mind you, I mean, we're facing a massive, and I'm going to say it, I'm going to use my French, we're facing a shit show all the time, right? Right? If it's Bill C-10, then it's Bill C-11, and then, it's Bill 63, and, it's pound, and then the news cycle is also pounding all kinds of issues. And then there's the numbers, right? And then there's the Canadians really suffering, right? The homelessness, the tent cities, the fentanyl. It's a Cloward Piven strategy. But what I see here is Bill C-293 is the tip of the spear of the globalists. And they might have overshot their mark, because Bill C-293 gets advanced by Erskine-Smith in 2022, June of 2022. June of 2024, the international health regulations for the WHO pass. 4.1 of it basically necessitates Bill C-293, right? And the pandemic treaty, the provisions of the pandemic treaty hasn't passed, has the same kind of content as Bill C-293. So Bill C-293, in their perfect world, answers a call for from international regulations that hasn't happened. So it's like what it plainly looks like to me when you put that together is that it's a conspiracy. So if it was a legitimate WHO negotiation on the international scene, they wouldn't know what provisions would actually end up in the negotiation. Right? If 196 parties were legitimately getting together to end up with a treaty and international health regulations, they wouldn't know the content of them. And then here you have Erskine-Smith putting together the bill that answers those two international items, one that only passed in 2024, but he puts his bill in 2022, and one that hasn't passed yet. So it both calls into, and for me as a lawyer, when I think about this, it calls in to really believe that this could be a conspiracy, both, and enough evidence that both the negotiation of the WHO pandemic treaty needed to meet this 293, and 293 was supposed to land in perfect harmony in October of 2024. Right. So it's I think when you put
we don't believe in conspiracies on this side, Lisa. Not at all. No conspiracy theories allowed here. We're not allowed to theory. I'm teasing. I'm being a little facetious.
Could you give us an idea of where if this was a hockey game and this is the Bill C-293 being passed, like, is it period 3? Is it's in the second reading in the Senate? Is that right? And what does it look like? Are there senators pushing back against it?
It's in the final stretch. And you know what? There's all kinds of Canadians getting on the ice and getting, in front of the goalie, right? Yeah.
Are there senators in like the Senate pushing back against it?
We haven't seen the arguments of the speeches that will push back. I can tell you that a one-click letter, just that one-click letter, has had to date 237,000 emails from Canadians, and those aren't all independent advocates. Those are the totality of emails that are going to senators, MPs, MPPs, Governor General. The day that we got our high, we had 35,000 in one day, 42,000 the next day, and the day after that, Trudeau's aides quit. And that's all a coincidence. I am sure. But something's going on now that we have actually a provincial government stepping up into the plate. And so now so someone's there. Now we've got to expand that. We want Ontario, we want Doug Ford, we want Scott Moe, we want all of Canadians to keep agitating. Because what's happening is our voices are working, and we're actually rekindling those conversations in our communities.
How can people, if they're sitting here listening, what's the easiest way for them to agitate their senator, their elected representatives?
Okay. How about we drop my one-click link in the chat, after this, and you can have it appended. They
Sure.
should be writing their Senate, and that's all online. No to Bill C-293, and explain the NFP. Maybe that's what we got to get to the next stage. But what other people are doing is they're taking that one-click email, they're printing that up, and they're going and talking to the strangers and neighbors, and they're meeting their friends and colleagues, and they're talking about something that's important to us. I think it's completely beautiful, and I want us to keep pushing.
Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate you coming on and short notice giving us an update. Really appreciate the work you're doing. Keep moving forward.
Well, thank you for giving a platform to this. Okay, bye, guys.
It's funny. I texted her, Greg. I'm like, oh my God, I can't figure out this 293. So I texted her like 20 minutes before the show. I'm like, what are you doing in 20 minutes? She's like, I don't know. What do you need? I'm like, well, I could really use you to come on and try and explain 293 to the audience of where it sits. So there you go, folks. A little update from lawyer Lisa Myron on where we're at with, I don't know, Bill C-293. All right, shocking. Mail-in ballots will decide BC election. Okay, I led off the start of this hour with like how successful our live election stream was, and we had a bunch of different personalities come on, and people were texting me the next day. It's like, well, what happened in the election? I'm like, I don't know. It was like 11 at night, our time, almost midnight, and we still didn't know. It was 46-45 in favor of the NDP, and this is what the news of today is. The final outcome of the 2024 provincial election in British Columbia won't be known until at least Monday, with two crucial riding recounts starting Sunday afternoon. Initial counts for the October 19th provincial election show the BC NDP are leading 46-45. Okay. And then it went on to say Western Standard said Elections BC has revealed now that around 65,000 ballots have yet to be tallied. The office had originally said the number was closer to 45,000, and shocker, it's way higher than they thought.
Is democracy real or is it fake? Is this a real democracy? Is this authentic? It's very hard to know. And I think that the first step is to be, what's the word? Very, very active and insistent and sort of hyper vigilant about it, because the spooky, creepy thing about living in Canada is if our elections were compromised, let's say they are, who would do something about it? Who would be doing the research and ringing the alarm bells about it? Because unfortunately, I don't think the CBC would. I don't think any of these mainstream media outlets would. These so-called investigative journalists that are the most popular in the country, because they get subsidized by the government. So I don't think they're actually doing that digging. And when you look at, aside from that, the other independent journalists, like, it would be up to us. It would be up to people to actually do that research, to look in to see, oh, wow, they are compromised, and I guess it's almost like there needs to be like a new organization in Canada who just hyper vigilantly focuses on this singular issue, which is election integrity across the country. We have to bring up, of course, what is it? The Dominion voting systems.
Well, I'm glad you did, because I reached out to Chase Barber, right? Edison Motors. He's been on the show multiple times.
Yep.
And he sent me a text, and he was trying to find out who's doing the voting election services in BC.
Right.
And it shouldn't shock any of us that it's MNP. And MNP is the one he basically got in a huge battle with, because he was trying to get, and forgive me, Chase, I wish I could have had you on to explain a little better than me, but basically he was trying to get some of the government funding for Edison Motors, right? They're green tech, right? And MNP is the company that reached out, said, would you like us to help you? It's going to cost you X, but we'll guarantee you get so much funding. And he said no. And then the company that was monitoring the applications was MNP, right? So it was a complete MNP was going to submit to MNP. And now they're the ones doing the election system. You're like, oh my God, this can't, like, are we watching this in real time? I'm like, it's a provincial election. And now we're seeing, it's gonna be a week after the election. Maybe we're gonna get some results. It's like, what? Is this the real world or not?
And what's even worse is this is kind of becoming a normal thing, right?
It's becoming a normal thing.
It used to be
mail-in ballots.
Next day, you will hear the results of an election, and now it's this normal thing of like, it might take a few days. It might take a few days for us to flub the number. I mean, it might take us to count them. It's going to take a few days for us to count them properly, is what I meant to say.
You had the U.S. election do it, which is the largest election in the world. So now it's become normal to hear that the election, where is it? It's like, well, we don't know. They've literally said they're going to take a week to figure it out. A week to figure it out? The amount of money the government spends on things, pay some people, get them in, let's count some votes, and let's find out what we got for a government.
Yeah, and I mean, it's alarming because people like you and me, we follow the politics, the play-by-play, and we get very outraged or upset or concerned about this going on. But if you talk to the regular Canadian, average Canadian, they might not be as alarmed or as concerned because it's not being put in their faces as, hey, we might live in a fake democracy. This might be fake elections, and I say that I mentioned starting an organization because somebody needs to do the work of looking into this stuff and then educating the rest of us to say, this is what the play-by-play looks like. This is how sketchy it is. Just to kind of validate our concerns, or at the very least to show the people who might be messing with our elections that, like, we're on top of you. We're gonna hold you to account, because I don't really see the solution to this problem other than us crossing our fingers and hoping they're not rigged. You know what I mean? It's not a good feeling.
It's not. It's yes. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Alberta shenanigans. Okay. Me and Tooz talked about this last week, and the news keeps breaking on it. So Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's United Conservative Party leadership campaign manager, Matthew Altheim, has been caught saying he had busloads of Muslims coming to its annual general meeting. Former Alberta Deputy Premier Thomas Lukaszczyk accused Altheim of trading Muslims like a commodity. This is what Danielle Smith is all about, he tweeted on Sunday. So this is them. This recording comes out, and he's bringing in tons of a certain block of voters to the UCP AGM, right? Because the smoke has been starting to form around this leadership review. Whether or not, people think she's going to get voted out? I don't know. I guess I'll let people comment. But there's been enough commentary around, is Danielle Smith the right person to lead? And then this leaks that, they're going to busload in people. And I've heard from different people in the political sphere that this is just another lever they pull on getting the right people there to have the right message. But I don't know, Greg, what do you think hearing this story?
I think it's similar to the last story, which is, how manipulated are the politics in this country? And that's at every level. It's at the municipal level, provincial level, and also the federal level. What sort of games are being played to influence the outcome of various different elections? That's not just elections of the province or the city. It's also elections of the actual parties. And here's the thing. There is an incentive to manipulate the outcome of these elections. What's the incentive? It's power and influence. It's the right to pull the levers of power in this country. Because of that, there's definitely an incentive to manipulate the outcome using any tactic you might be able to use. So in this case, are you suggesting that this guy is busing a bunch of Muslims to the AGM? Is that like the United Conservative Party's like meetup?
Big thing. Yes. It's the annual general meeting for the UCP party. And this year, out of the 4 years that Danielle Smith's elected, this is the 1 year where there's a leadership review, meaning, if she gets less than 50%, in theory, not in theory, she gets less than 50%, boom, she's out as leader, and you have a leadership race, right? And I wouldn't have put that much thought into it, because a lot of the people I talk to are quite content with Danielle Smith. Now, there's a lot that aren't, but now you start to see this and you go, oh, this is really strange, Now you got close to 6,000 people showing up for this thing.
Yeah. So when you talk to the average Canadian, they are not super political. You know what I mean? Like the average Canadian, they might not be super politically engaged. And I think it's just kind of part of our nation's character at the moment. I think that's going to change as we face sort of more issues and problems. But so they're kind of naive. And I think for the people in politics, though, you need to stop being naive, because the people who I think might be manipulating our politics at higher levels or effectively, they are, super cynical. They take advantage of our naivete. And I think that, like, as I said, there's an incentive to secure power, right? So that incentive is going to attract sociopaths, manipulative people who want power, people maybe with malicious intentions. So when you're if you're like us, if you're more in the world of politics, if you're part of one of these political parties, especially, you need to be very cynical. You need to be very cynical in terms of who you're talking with, what their true incentives are. And, just watch your back and be aware that there might be some funny business going on, because, as I said, there's an incentive to,
No filter. I enjoyed this. Mel Gibson confirms he's not voting, or he's voting for Donald Trump. Well, I'll let him say it.
Second term with the president's second term. A lot of people I know what it'll be like if we let her in. Yeah. Oh, really? That ain't good. Yeah. Well, miserable track record, appalling track record, no policies to speak of. Yeah. And the border, right? She's got the IQ of a fence post. She voted all day.
Oh man, and the IQ of a fence post. Give the win to Mel Gibson.
You love it. You love to see it. I was on a podcast last night talking about the supremacy of political correctness. And it's like we're all sort of under the supremacy of the political correctness. We can't say the wrong thing. And I always love when anybody sort of opposes this supremacy, opposes it, and says something, oh, that's mean. You can't say that. Oh, she's a woman. That's mean. And at the same time, these are the same people, the same Democrats who are like, oh, I wish they wouldn't have missed. Like, actually wishing death upon their political opponents and then shaming somebody else for, calling somebody stupid. It's like these people have no ground to stand on when it comes to like condemning Mel Gibson for being mean or whatever. It's a blood sport. Politics is a blood sport. It gets ugly. And I think in general, this sort of hypersensitivity to people saying something mean is part of the problem. It's connected to cancel culture and all that nonsense. So
diversity is our strength. A firestorm has erupted over revelations that the Islamic religious concepts have been abusively forced on elementary students at Montreal's Bedford Public School since 2016. Concerns have now expanded beyond Bedford to 3 more schools in the area. 11 Bedford Muslim teachers, predominantly members of the North African Marabi clan, I hope I'm saying that right, were suspended along with their licenses. A committee determined the students' were physical, psychological, and emotional well-being was being jeopardized. The teachers are accused of screaming at students, treating boys and girls differently. For example, gender discrimination against girls, not allowing them to play soccer, and inflicting humiliating punishments on children with learning disabilities who were called lazy. These students were deprived of help because resource staff were barred from entering classrooms.
Yeah, you thought residential schools was bad. No, but this is This is a crazy story. And once again, I love your title for it. Diversity is our strength, because this is simply something that you would not hear about talked about on the CBC, because it has a negative implication upon diversity. It's like we have a bunch of, African teachers who are enforcing Islamic beliefs onto their students violently and abusively. Like, this is a crazy headline. Were you able to find like the CBC or anyone else like talking about this?
No, I don't. As you mentioned it, I'll Google it real fast again, because
It's just the Montreal Gazette and the Western
Montreal Gazette. Well,
happened
you
to
know
me.
what? The CBC. Here's the CBC. A Montreal elementary school. This is their headline. A Montreal elementary school is at the center of a secular. Man, I can't even say it. Secularism debate. Here's how we got there. That's their headline. There you go. There's the CBC talking about it.
Can you control F
What-
African and see if it comes up? Get to the point.
Control F.
Yeah,
Is that
for
what you
like
said?
finding a word on the page.
Oh goodness. No. Why would I
Sorry,
be
you don't
able
have
to do that?
now? I'll do it on my own time. But it's very, I'm a kind of a media nerd. I like to like look at how the mainstream media does or does not cover things. And it would be my bet that maybe they do bring up the fact that they were African, or there's an Islamic tilt, or that kind of colors the entire thing. But if it's mentioned, I can guarantee you it'll be at the bottom of the article. Nothing to do with the actual headline, nothing to do with the actual, sort of the actual cultural weight, or the sort of cultural trajectory, I guess, of this story, which is obviously significant. But again, like, let's read the headline, the CBC headline again, and see if it has anything to do with culture. A Montreal elementary school is at the center of a secularism debate. Here's how we got here. So nothing about teachers abusing students
And look,
cultural beliefs.
if you look underneath that, Greg, you go, provincial politicians accused of pouncing on religion for political gain.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
How are they framing it? Right? They're framing it, yet not on the actual story.
It's very interesting. Very interesting.
Heist fail of the week. Before we got started, Greg was asking me, but he's like, I got comments on everything but this heist thing. And so if you're new to the show, like Greg, we do heists from time to time. This is probably the worst heist of all time. And of course, it happens while Tooz isn't here. A former pro football player plot to rob $1.2 million in marijuana profits 3 years ago went awry when he discovered the bags full of stolen cash were too heavy to carry. So the bags being heavy is probably something you should have planned for. One, you're going to steal a lot of money. That's great. Anyways, so he chucked them in the Colorado woods and ran away. Okay, you think, okay, that's bad enough. Here's where it gets worse. This is Devin Aguilar, former college standout who briefly played for the Tennessee Titans. He made another big mistake during the previously unreported December 2021 heist. He forgot his gloves, the gloves he wore for this, in the bag, which was later found by cops.
Just like that football game all over again, where you forgot your gloves. Crap, it happened again. I forgot my gloves for the heist. Crap. What is this, amateur hour? Man, that's embarrassing. Wouldn't you feel like such an ass to like steal this money and then throw it in the bushes?
Wait, this is a bad idea. Oh wait, it's a bad idea. I'm gonna put my gloves in the bag. Just like what?
Idiot. Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't go to practice. He did not go to practice for
practice?
that.
We talking about practice? I don't know how much people are falling up with bricks, but obviously they had their big brick summit. Here's one of the pictures. The new currency supposedly unveiled. Here's a family photo. It's the BRICS family photo, I should say. You got a whole ton of countries all aligning on the other side. Very interesting story to follow. One of the things that I'd read was they got BRICS Bridge. It's a modern blockchain-based financial system to go against SWIFT. I don't know how much you're paying attention to this, Greg, but I thought it was newsworthy to bring up the fact that it was happening this week.
If it's not Bitcoin, I don't even care. No, I'm not a huge finance guy, but this stuff is certainly interesting. And people who are smarter than me are saying that, America might be failing as the sort of like hegemonic power of the world. Like the US dollar might be replaced by this new currency. And unfortunately, I think the trend is, where are things manufactured? Like a lot of things used to be manufactured in the Western world, and now all the manufacturing, a lot of it anyway, is in China. And there might be long-term implications of that. And part of that might being a sort of sway of sort of financial power moving away from America and the Western world to BRICS. So I'm not a huge finance guy, as I said, but that's about all I can say on it, really.
50,000 smackers. Yeah, you heard that right. To find this guy, I'm gonna pull up his face here, so we got her handy. If I can, there we go. Everybody's like, Sean, come on. Here you go. Manhunt to locate Regina homicide suspect Daniel Juma Dri Adam. I don't know. Expands across the West. The BOLO program, a national nonprofit dedicated to highlighting wanted criminals, announced on Thursday it was expanding its campaign to locate this man. The effort includes an extensive billboard campaign across Saskatchewan, and Alberta offers a reward of up to $50,000 for information leading to Adam's arrest. So I thought, heck, hey, Mashup listeners, you see this dude, it could be 50,000 smackers in your pocket, or to Ontario's in Greg's world.
If you're wondering what he looks like a Regina man. We're looking for a Regina man. If you see him, he'll look like he's from Regina. He also has dreadlocks, and here's a photo of him. But no, isn't this the police's job though? I mean, it's kind of funny. It's like, hey, citizen, we'll give you $50,000 to hunt down this Regina man, and it's like, isn't that your job? Isn't that why we pay taxes, for you guys to find this guy?
It's funny though. I tell you what, if they did this on all the criminals, pedophiles, et cetera, I feel like the population would be like 50 grand to find that guy. All right, let's find this guy. He can't be that hard.
That's a fair enough point. Maybe this would
like
be
we're not. If it was $5, I'd be like, oh, interesting. $50,000. Like, man, we should find this person, fund the mashup, and away we go. We got 50 in the bank. We could start our own thing, just following the Bojo project, and just start find these guys.
Is this an app? Is this an app idea that we're going to develop together?
Maybe.
Oh my god. Find the criminal. Find the criminal. That'd be crazy. Because I was just thinking of the alerts you get on your phone, and you look down, and it's like looking for a gray Honda, $5,000 reward. Oh, I might get off the couch and actually look. Then, dang.
$50,000 reward. You'd be like, holy crap, out the door, hun, let's go. He's in your area. He's in my area. I could get 50 grand.
It'd be like Pokemon Go, except you're looking for pedophiles and criminals. I mean, that'd be a pretty cool app, would it not?
It would be beneficial to society as well.
Mm-hmm.
Free speech. Professional regulators in Alberta may soon have less control over censoring employees' and members' personal opinions and beliefs. A joint announcement from Alberta Premier Daniel Smith and Justice Minister Mickey Amery has come in response to growing concerns that professional bodies have been overstepping their boundaries by restricting free speech and requiring compulsory training unrelated to professional duties. Quoted, a diversity of opinions and beliefs is one of the hallmarks of a free, healthy, and democratic society, Premier Smith said. Many of the greatest ideas and advancements in history started out as a non-conventional and controversial ideas that became popular in mainstream only after a few brave women and men were able to convince their fellow citizens of their value. And quoted again, what a doctor or lawyer believes or says about politics is not a reflection of their competency to practice medicine or law. I also wanted to point out in Alberta, it says is home of 189 regulated professions across 12 ministries. So that's, when you start to factor in how many people are being censored by their governing body, 189 different professions. And Marty up north, I pulled up his tweet because he put out a tweet as well. So shout out to Marty, who's been a guest host on here before, because he listed off a bunch, one of them being his background in engineering. So it's an interesting thing to follow.
Yeah, no, at the very least, I love this as a conversation starter from Danielle Smith. I know people have criticisms of Danielle Smith, but she, at the very least, has been good at giving a voice to, unvaccinated Canadians and people who have been discriminated against. And at the very least, this is, even if this doesn't lead to a necessarily policy change, it would be nice. At the very least, it's a good conversation starter because this is definitely a massive problem. Here in Ontario, I have a friend who is a doctor, and he has, he's beholden to the Ontario Regulatory Board of Ontario physicians and doctors, or whatever it is. And he's shown me the magazine that he gets sometimes from them. And it is more progressive than the CBC sometimes. It is like, we need to talk about racism in medicine. We need to talk about indigenization and Islamophobia in medicine. It's like, what does this have to do with me having a cold or breaking my leg? Is a broken leg of a Muslim guy different than my broken leg? It makes no sense. And it's not a subtle thing in some cases. Each regulatory board, I'm sure, is different. But I'm sure you could talk to any number of people across the spectrum of different occupations, and they would say, no, it's heavy. Like they push this stuff heavy in terms of trying to have very specific politics. And of course, this reflects what we're seeing in education, and you see it trickle through into the mainstream media in so many different ways.
And Zane is commenting correct here from Alberta. Wait, didn't the UCP oppress one of theirs just recently? Jennifer Johnson. And that's what everybody who loves the announcement, right? Because we've all been talking about this for a long time. It's all like, yeah, 100% she's right. But the criticism is Jennifer Johnson, right? And we've talked about that story. And so you go, wait a second. Not the kettle calling the pot black. Like, I'm just, and that's a very interesting point to point out, Zane. I'm just saying, we got a sharp audience here. You're not missing much, and you're not wrong.
Zane's absolutely right. That was like a struggle session. That was a struggle session from a transgender person saying 2 + 2 = 5. Trans women are women. Say it. So absolutely, that is the pot calling the kettle black.
She is back a part of the UCP, I would like to point out, but he's not wrong there. California is not a serious state. I don't know how much we want to spend on this, but here, okay, here's the latest, like California at times, I'm like, resembles Canada so much. So I'm like, is this coming to Canada at some point? Family lawyers are raising the alarm in California about California's Proposition 3, which guarantees a right to marriage without defining what marriage is, opening the door to allowing new non-monogamous forms of marriage. So polygamous marriage has been illegal in the United States since 1882, but a new California proposition, which California will be voting on in this new election season, could change that. And California Proposition 3, titled The Right to Marry and Repeal Proposition 8 Amendment, is being marketed as a same-sex marriage law, despite same-sex marriage being legalized nationwide since 2015. So look out, folks. You could have a person married to 18 people.
Well, I'm happy about this because now I can move to California and finally marry my dog. This is something I've always wanted to do. I've wanted to get married to my pet. There is no definition of marriage. So that's what I'm going to do now, Sean. I'm going to go marry my dog. But jokes aside, isn't it unbelievable how correct the Bible thumpers from the 90s were? Because to give you guys an idea, the Bible thumpers from the 90s said, we can't have gay marriage. There's going to be people marrying pets eventually. And it's like, this technically opens that up to the possibility with this new legislation of just making the definition of marriage so broad. But I just think it's funny that more and more often it's like, we thought these crazy Bible thumpers were insane, but like they're kind of being validated and vindicated.
They're looking awfully sharp. They're looking awfully sharp.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is pretty wild. It is California. So, I go, I should have just stuck it in here. The goofy news. Okay. The goofy news, folks, this week, I'm going to rattle off a couple things here. First, starting with a church service ends after an 8th hour after guitar's delay pedal gets stuck. And here's a quote from this article. Like, I'm like, this would be rough. I thought we were just really going all in on Oceans, explained. That's a song. That song always feels interminable. When we hit chorus number 17, though, I started to suspect something was amiss. 3 hours in, one of the backup singers just fell over. It was a worship service of attrition. At some point, somebody's just got to step up and say, hey, can we just stop singing this song for the last three hours? Wild. German police say pizza order number 40 came with a side of cocaine. German police busted a pizzeria in western city of Dusseldorf after that also delivered a side order of cocaine when customers asked for number 40. That was one of the best-selling pizzas, criminal director Michael Graf von Moltke told reporters in Dusseldorf, you don't say. And a New Zealand airport wants you to hug goodbye faster. Travelers leaving New Zealand city of Dunedin will have to keep their emotional farewells brief, and a new 3-minute time limit was imposed on goodbye hugs.
Wow. I remember hearing about a code at our local pizzeria. You'd ask for extra green peppers if you wanted something extra special and green with your pizza. It costs another like, 10 or $20 for your pie, but
so this isn't something new then.
No, it's not. It's not. Drug dealers will find a way. They will find a way.
I think this is just newsworthy today. Here, I'll pull it up on screen. I think this is, whether you've been paying attention. I've been wondering when Joe Rogan's going to have Donald Trump on for a very long time. Actually, if he'd have Kamala Harris on, I think I'd listen to that too. And yet neither one of them is doing it. Today, Joe Rogan, Donald Trump sitting down. I think that should be an interesting conversation. Am I wrong on that, Craig? I feel like maybe it should be.
Absolutely. I mean, Joe Rogan is kind of like the platform, like the most popular platform you can be on right now. And so it's kind of like the equivalent of a presidential nominee being on not Carlin. What was the popular talk show host way back in the day? The Tonight Show with
Jay Leno?
But I was thinking of the guy before that. But it's that culturally significant. Like Joe Rogan today is the cultural significance of a talk show, a late night talk show back in the day, in terms of the whole nation is going to be watching. And what's cool about Joe Rogan is that it's like, it's a 3-hour conversation, so they'll probably get into a lot of interesting stuff. I'm sure whether or not you see it live, I'm sure clips will be filling up the news feed for weeks to come. And it's going to be great content, great fodder to see what Joe can bring out of President Trump. Johnny Carson, thank you.
Yes, the listeners are sharp.
Us young and dumb whippersnappers, not even knowing
the listeners are smart. The listeners are smart. Yes, it should be interesting. Finally, folks, on today's Mashup 130, we got some happy news. I think this was pretty happy. BART workers fired due to COVID vaccine mandate to get over 1 million each. Federal jury decides. That's down in San Francisco. A federal jury has sided with fired BART, that's Bay Area Rapid Transit workers, who sued the agency claiming they lost their jobs over COVID vaccine mandates. There are 6 of them in total, and the lawsuit, they will each receive more than $1 million apiece. So
that's huge. That's justice. That feels good. I feel good. I've forgotten about everything else we just talked about, and I'm feeling happy now. But hopefully that translates to something here in Canada and other COVID cases identical pretty well to this.
You hope so. You hope that we're going to start to see our own. Mashup 130 in the books. Folks, I was happy to have Greg hop on with us. Hopefully I wasn't too painful for him. I know there's some comments in there, people wishing Twos was back, but saying Greg was doing okay. They're probably more harassing me, saying Sean needs to just allow Twos to host the show. That's usually how it goes. He only allows positive feedback of Twos, so it's interesting. They didn't know what to do this week. They're like, I can't say anything good about Twos because Sean won't show it because I'm in control this week, folks, and you're learning. But I appreciate you hopping on, Greg, and doing this, answering the call. I think this has been a lot of fun. Mashup 130 in the books. Your thoughts to close it out?
Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, I think we covered a lot of good ground. Happy to be on the show to try and attempt to fill Twos' massive shoes. Sounds like I failed, but hey, the only way we can get better is by trying.
That's not what I was saying. I thought you did fantastic myself. And I would point out that having a guy from the other side of Canada was interesting as well, because you have some interesting takes that me and Two sitting here in Alberta, at times we align a lot on a lot of things. At times we just argue like an old married couple. Either way, thanks, Greg, for hopping on. Folks, thanks for hopping on as well. Thanks for being here. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Oh, and tune in Monday night, would you? We got the Sask election live stream. It's going to be a ton of fun. And, just before I go, I'm going to rattle off the names so everybody remembers. Jerry Ritz, John Gormley, Lees Merle, Nanine S., Quick Dick McDick, Brad Wall, Ken Rutherford, Angela Smith, Lee Harding, Gage Hodbridge, Wayne Peters, Jamie Sinclair on Rumble, YouTube, X, Facebook at 6 p.m. Mountain. It's going to be a ton of fun. Twos will be back. Greg, until next time.
See ya.